welcome to Dr. Amber Thornton's Know and Grow podcast, where you're never alone in navigating life's biggest moments and toughest lessons. Join me, Dr. Amber Thornton, clinical psychologist, mother of two, as I explore motherhood, parenting, relationships, career, mental health, and the ongoing journey of personal evolution. No, it doesn't stop. These conversations will absolutely make you laugh, may make you cry, will get you to reflect, but more importantly, you'll grow and we'll get to grow together. So I'm glad you're here, and I hope that you'll come back. Tune in weekly for informative, thought-provoking, inspiring conversations right here with me. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Dr. Amber's Know and Grow podcast. It's good to be with you all again for another episode. There has been a lot happening for me in the last few weeks or so, more so internally, I would say. And I still think it's a lot, astrologically that's impacting me. But as far as the podcast, I've really been thinking about how I want to show up on the podcast. What are the things that are bringing me joy here? What are the things I want to keep evolving? And I think recently I realized that with this podcast, it doesn't all have to be perfect right now. This will continue to evolve just like I'm evolving. And so there's going to be things that I try, things that I take out, things that I keep doing. And I was thinking about this astrology segment, and I noticed that I love astrology. And because I love it so much, there's more that I want to say about it. I feel like there's more than just 5 minutes that I want to dedicate to our astrology segment. So what I want to play around with is separating it out and every now and then making astrology be a full episode. I just want to try it. I just want to see it. It's not going to be today's episode, but today I wanted to let you know that we won't have an astrology segment, because instead is me explaining to you that I want to try my hand at just having a full episode where I just explore astrology with you. And I know that I promised you an exploration of the houses, and I still want to do that. And I actually want to show you this book. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see it. I recently got a new book called A Map to Your Soul. I was at the bookstore, and this book appealed to me. Let me tell you the full title. A Map to Your Soul, Using the Astrology of Fire, Earth, Air, and Water to Live Deeply and Fully. This book appealed to me because it is by a psychologist. And so she calls herself, her name is Jennifer Freed. And I think she calls herself it's not an astropsychologist. I forget what she calls herself, but basically she's one that uses astrology in her psychology practice. And I thought that was so dope, because when I was looking for astrology books, and especially with learning more about the houses, I wanted the perspective of a psychologist, because I'm a psychologist. And so I pulled this one, and this one is cool because it's actually all about the houses, but she kind of takes it and puts her own spin on it that is based in psychology and more about the elements of air, earth, water, and fire. So I'm reading this book, and I actually just finished the first chapter, which is all about the first house. So I want to be prepared to come back in a future episode to talk more about that. As we get into the houses, I'm going to be using this book a lot to guide me in the process. So stay tuned for that. For those of you who were very much looking forward to the astrology segments and exploring the houses together, we will do it. But I think it's going to be better because there's going to be a lot more dedication and commitment around it. Because it's just, I could just feel myself rushing through the astrology segment, and I didn't like that. I didn't like that. And maybe you all didn't either. I don't know. So we'll play around with it. In these episodes, I don't know if they'll be full 30 minutes. They might be shorter. We'll see. But either way, that's what's going on for the astrology segment. So for today's episode, I want to tell you a story of a time in my life that was challenging And I am hoping that you will learn from the mistakes that I made during this time and take away whatever lesson you need to take away so that you don't make the same mistake, whether you're in a similar space that I was in or whether it's another space. Um, and I actually want to do more of these in the future. And in my mind, I'm going to title this Learn from My Mistakes series, where every now and then I'll have an episode where it's me telling you about a mistake that I've made in my life or in my journey of living and or motherhood or career relationships, whatever time of life it was. But I want to talk about the mistakes that I've made and how you can ensure that you don't make the same mistake. So learn from my mistakes, a new series that you'll probably see again. But today I want to talk about my experience of postpartum anxiety. um, as you all know, or if you're unfamiliar with me, you'll learn this. I have two children. I am a mom of two. My oldest right now is 4, my youngest is 2, but very soon they'll be 3 and 5. So lately I've just been thinking about myself as a mom and how I'm almost 5 years in, which is really interesting because it still feels new. And yet when you look at your children and you see how they're growing, you can see the progress that has been made, and you're like, I'm not doing this no more. Like, yes, there's still so much more to learn. We still have so much more progress to make. They're still little, but they're not babies anymore. I've been a mom for 5 years. And when I had my first child, my son, Cedric, I actually had a very, very, very smooth pregnancy for the most part. There were a few things that popped up that were really scary, but for the most part, pregnancy was smooth. Um, Delivery didn't go as planned. Had a C-section, but recovered, and all was well. I was up and moving shortly after. I really appreciate my first experience of having a child because it was so peaceful. It was so, I think that's really the word, peaceful. Peaceful. And I know that that's not everyone's experience, especially when they have their first child, but I'm so grateful to God and the universe for that being my very first introduction to motherhood, because me having my son was just, yes, there was an adjustment period for sure. Breastfeeding was very challenging, but overall, it was a very peaceful experience. And I got through it. We were a family. We got through the pandemic. And to be quite honest with you, yes, the pandemic was scary, but I really enjoyed it just being us. We got to bunker down in our homes, and it was just me, my husband, and my son for months at a time. And that was very peaceful to me. We got to shut out the world. We got to shut out everything and just live with us. And that, honestly, for me, again, my experience really helped solidify this is how we do things as a family. This is how we as parents, me and my husband, this is how we are learning how to navigate parenthood. That process was really helpful for us because it was very much just us figuring it out, without a lot of influences or a lot of back and forth from other people. So my first experience of being a mom and my first experience of postpartum was very, very good. Then I had my second child. I had my second child, Eden. Got pregnant with her during the pandemic. My son was 1 at the time. When I ended up having her, he was almost 2. He was right at the edge of 2. So it's kind of wild to think when I had my second child, my first one was still 1. But that's what we wanted. But this experience, the second experience of postpartum, was completely different. And I think there were so many factors that contributed to why the second experience was very different. One, we had been in the pandemic for almost 2 years at that point. So I think just the stress of the day to day in that experience probably started to weigh on us a bit. But then also we had a whole other child. We had gone through the first experience where we only got to focus on my son. We only had to focus on him. But the second time it was like, okay, how do we have a new baby, but then also focus on the child that we already have, in addition to all the other things that we love and we enjoy? It was challenging. It was challenging. And looking back on it, I can see how much more challenging it was than I realized. So, ended up having my second daughter, or my second child, which was my daughter, and the experience of postpartum was completely different. I ended up having some health complications. I ended up having a much more challenging recovery because I could not rest as much or as well as I did the first time because I had a toddler at the same time. And I also experienced a great deal of postpartum anxiety. And so those three experiences of the health complication, having another child, but then also debilitating, I'm going to go ahead and say debilitating postpartum anxiety really made for a very much different experience for me. The health complication I ended up having, oh my gosh, I'm so far removed from this now, I forgot the name. Um, Postpartum preeclampsia. I have postpartum preeclampsia, which doesn't often happen. Usually, when you have preeclampsia, it happens towards the end of your pregnancy and then it resolves itself after you have your child. But for me, what they noticed, or what I noticed, is that the first week after having my child, I had never had high blood pressure until this moment, but like that first week I had my daughter and my blood pressure was high. It was like 160 over 100, or it would go up to 170 over something. And it was just very concerning because never in my life had I ever had any blood pressure issues. So called the doctor. The doctor said continue to monitor it, but it just kept escalating. It kept going up and up and up throughout the course of the few days. And at that time I decided, okay, I'm just going to go to the hospital. So I was readmitted back to the hospital when my daughter was maybe 7 to 10 days old. And that was tough too, because it's like, okay, I have a new baby. I have to go to the hospital alone because my husband needs to stay with the kids. I'm also trying to breastfeed and pump. They wouldn't let me bring the baby. It was a mess. I think that was the moment where my postpartum anxiety really started to play a role. For sure. For sure. That is when my brain started to really get activated and fearful with regard to what was happening to my life. I think as a Black mother, many of you, if you're Black women, you can probably relate to this. I personally have been so impacted by the data and the stories that we hear about what can happen to Black women in motherhood when they are having babies. It made me so fearful about my own body and my own mortality when it comes to giving birth. And then also, will I live? Will I survive? And so all of that was a perfect storm for, I had this health complication. We went back to the hospital. It ended up getting resolved. But after that, my anxiety was through the roof. Through the roof. I was debilitated by anxiety for months. And I had never experienced anything like this ever before. I have always been a person who has had anxiety, like always. I always. I probably was born with it. I don't know. Like I've always been a somewhat anxious child. I tend to worry. I tend to have concerns. That's usually my baseline. But never has it been so debilitating where I felt like I couldn't just sit. I couldn't just be. I couldn't just be present. I was so afraid every day, most days, for months at a time after having my daughter. It was debilitating. When women have postpartum anxiety, the experiences of it can be very different. For many women, the experiences are about their children's safety. So the fears or the concerns might be around, is my child safe? Is something going to happen to them? Are they being cared for properly? Fears about separating from them because they don't want anything to happen. Many of the fears and the worries and the anxieties are about the safety of the child. On the other hand, for some women, and this was the bucket that I fell into, there are some women who have a lot of fears and concerns and worries about their own safety. and their own livelihood. I wonder, and this is not something that I have studied or have researched or looked into, but I wonder if that is an experience that Black women specifically right now are having, just because we know so much and we have been exposed to so much about what can happen to Black women after they have babies, after they have children. And so for me, my postpartum anxiety was very much centered around, am I going to live to be able to actually parent my children? I was so fearful of having to have another C section. I was so fearful about the fact that my blood pressure was high. I was so fearful about having to go back to the hospital and worried I would not make it home. And then after I was released from the hospital, I was so fearful that I would die. And this is not something that I talk about a lot. People who know me personally know this very well. And I don't like to share it. One, because I worked really hard to heal and recover. And it was such a really low time for me. But I think it's important to start to share it because there are women who experience this or who have experienced it, and they don't talk about it because it's uncomfortable, like me. Or they just don't have anyone to talk about it, or they haven't heard people talking about it. But when I was at my lowest with my postpartum anxiety, and this was a period of time, it began honestly the first week that I had Eden, my daughter, and it lasted. I'm trying to think of the timeline. Oh, it may have lasted about 8 months because so much other things happened in that time. It was a low time. It was a very low time. My postpartum anxiety was completely debilitating. It led me to believe that I was gonna die. I thought that high blood pressure was going to kill me. I thought that I would have severe chronic health complications from what was going on with my body. I was so hyper vigilant about anything happening in my body. If I would feel a headache and I was thinking, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have a stroke and die. Um, I would have my heart maybe might increase, and my heart rate might increase, and I would feel like, oh my gosh, there's something going on with my heart. Something's going to happen to me. Any little sensation that I would feel in my body, I was so concerned that it meant that I was going to die. And so that was a big concern for me. Am I going to live? But then once you start thinking like that constantly, it also then goes to, I'm not going to be able to care for my children. You know, the fear also then became, if I die, when I die, what will happen to my kids? What will happen to my husband? I'm not going to be able to be here. And so it then also started to become this dread, this sadness, this hopelessness, because I thought, if and when I die, because whatever's happening to my body is, I'm not going to survive it, I'm not going to be able to experience the joy that I want to feel. My life is going to end. Postpartum anxiety. It truly led me to believe for several days, many moments of the day, for months at a time, that I was going to die. This was completely not okay for me to be experiencing, and it was so hard to be present with my kids. It was so hard to just enjoy the fun moments that we were having. I recall one time we were at the park, and I was maybe like, it was the summertime and it was a really good day. We were out in DC, and Eden was a baby. And at that time, you know, I was doing okay. My blood pressure was somewhat managed. And I just remember thinking about being so hyper vigilant about, okay, what happens if I start to not feel well here, and if we need to leave. right? Like, what if I have a medical emergency while we're out here? The entire time that we were out enjoying the weather, having a good time with the kids. On the surface, it looked like I was fine, but the whole time I kept thinking about what if something goes wrong and my blood pressure spikes, I have a stroke, I have a medical emergency, and something happens here. I just kept planning for, okay, what happens when that occurs? What do I need to be listening to in my body to make sure I'm okay? I kept asking myself, am I okay? Am I okay? I had to keep convincing myself I'm okay because I was so convinced that something was going to happen while I was out. So it's like, how and why would you even want to go out and enjoy your family when you're always thinking like that? It was bad. I was at the lowest I had ever been, and many people didn't know. Um, the resolve, right? I ended up taking high blood pressure medication. I did that for a full year. I did it. And eventually, my doctor, we monitored my blood pressure and we're like, okay, I think you're okay. And so I discontinued it after a year. In the process, I also started therapy. During the process of therapy, I decided to do EMDR. Um, EMDR is a special type of therapy. It stands for eye movement desensitization, something. As a psychologist, I should know that, but I'm not trained in EMDR, so I don't know the full title. I'll try to put that in the show notes. But it's really good for people who have experienced traumas, who have diagnoses of PTSD, and people who have severe anxiety, which I had. I had always honestly been skeptical of EMDR, but I decided to give it a try because I was so desperate to feel better because it was too much. Also during this time, you all, and this is probably something we will talk about in another episode, but I cannot not mention this. My father passed away during this time as well. And he passed away on May 28th of 2021, and my daughter was born April 16th. So literally a month and a half after my daughter was born, and I was in the thick of postpartum anxiety, thinking I was going to die. My father passes away, and here's the kicker. He passes away because of his chronic health condition of congestive heart failure, which was because of a very long life of high blood pressure. So that is something I think we should probably come back to and talk about. And it makes me think, I think that is partly why this fear of high blood pressure was just so prominent for me. I was so fearful that I was going to die because postpartum anxiety put a spotlight on it, but then also it was like I have experiences with this. My father lived with this for forever, and then boom, he dies. So a big part of my therapy was really learning to dissociate his experience, his health complications, his health and mortality, and mine. And it's really hard to do that alone when you're experiencing severe anxiety. But part of what I had to do was to learn that whatever happened to my father, whatever was happening with his body for most of my life, how he died is not my story. And I had to really like have a professional to help me separate those things out because my postpartum anxiety truly wanted me to believe that, well, you know how this goes. And so look, see what happened? This is going to happen to you too. It was wild, y'all. I also, through the process of therapy, had to learn that just because my body is doing something doesn't always mean that I'm gonna die. And I know that that sounds so drastic, right? That sounds so crazy, but that is what can happen with anxiety. Our thoughts, our worries, our fears are not often logical or not often rational, but in the moment they feel so real. So many moments I truly believed that that day, that week, I was going to die. And so the process of therapy taught me, hey, a headache is just a headache. A quick pain in your chest is just a quick pain. Maybe you moved the wrong way, right? Like that sensation in your heart, a flutter, it doesn't mean anything all the time. And I had to learn how to trust my body and how to feel safe in my body. And that was also a big lesson. I did not feel safe in my body, but the process of therapy helped me to feel more safe. The thing that I wish that I would have done differently, and the mistake I feel like I made, and what I don't want you to make, is I absolutely should have taken medication for my anxiety. I absolutely should have taken medication for my anxiety. And I say that because the process that I went through with trying to manage my anxiety on my own, yes, with the help of therapy too, but mostly trying to do this on my own, I got through it, but it was damaging. It felt devastating. It was debilitating. And it absolutely took me away from being able to be present and nurturing and loving to my children and even my husband. Granted, there were a lot of other things happening, right? But like, why did I feel like I had to do that by myself? Why was I so hesitant to consider medication, and or why was it not offered to me? As a psychologist now, if I had a client who was going through that, I absolutely would recommend that, or at least let them know it's an option. And I wish that I had someone to advocate for me in that way and present it to me and help me to understand the pros and the cons, and help me to know that it was an option for me. I absolutely should have taken, or at least considered, medication when I was going through the most severe experience of anxiety that I had ever had. Anytime that someone is fearful of death and or having thoughts of death, for me it wasn't suicidal in nature, but I was fearful that I would not live. That's so uncomfortable. No one should be experiencing that on their day to day. And there are options for how to help. And I absolutely wish that I would have considered or had someone advocate for me and let me know that medication could be an option. I believe that if I were to try that and would have found the right fit, it would have just gave me another tool to help me cope. I wouldn't have had to hold on so tightly. I wouldn't have had to feel like I was working so hard to get a grip on life. In the midst of having a new baby, getting acclimated to being a mom of two, and grieving the loss of my father, why did I feel like I had to do that on my own without medication? I think a lot of time, especially for Black women, we tend to not consider medication for our mental health as an option because we feel like it means that we have failed. We often feel like it's just an indication that we need to try harder. We often think that it needs to be a last resort, not realizing that we already are at the last resort, right? We often just are like, no, I gotta push more, push more, push more. Whole time, baby, you've been at the last resort for months. And that's where I was at. It's like, oh, that's an absolute last resort. But look how low you are right now. Look how devastated and debilitated you are right now. I wish someone could have said that to me and let me know that medication was an option for me. So I hope you learn from the mistake that I made. If you are ever at a low point in your mental health, whether it's postpartum, whether it's a new adjustment or a new transition you're taking in life, whether it's something, whatever you're going through, whether it's grief or loss, trauma, when you're at your lowest, when you are feeling debilitated by anxiety or depression, when you feel like you don't have the tools to cope, there are so many options. There's therapy, there's psychiatric medication. There are a lot of things that we can do, but we have to be open and honest about what we need. We have to be open minded to considering those options. We also need people to advocate for us, to let us know that these are options. And maybe this podcast can also be a space for that, helping people know, hey, when I'm going through it, when I'm having a hard time, I have options, and these are some of the options because I heard Dr. Amber talk about it. So thank you for listening to my story today. I really hope that you take something from it. so that you don't make another mistake like I did. I hope that you enjoyed today's episode of Dr. Amber's Know and Grow podcast. And of course, at the end of every episode, we close it out with an affirmation. But you all, because I am evolving and changing and really working to become more of who I am, I am going to swap it out today for a tarot card. So, this is what I want to let you know. In addition to my interest in astrology, I have also, for a very long time, been very interested in tarot. I have received several tarot readings, like so many, but never felt confident enough or like I was able to do this on my own. And then last weekend, actually 2 weeks ago, no, last weekend, it was about a little over a week ago, I was out shopping with my husband and I saw this amazing tarot deck, and it was made by this Black woman, and it was so pretty, and I was like, oh my gosh. And he was like, you should get it. And I was like, am I ready? And he was like, okay, whatever, just get it if you want it. And I was like, I think I do want it. And so I am officially beginning my journey of exploring the tarot. I'm excited. It's something that I've wanted to do for a long time, and my intentions with it is really to just improve my relationship with my intuition a little bit more, and just really get comfortable with the tools that can help guide me in this process of life, especially during the moments of uncertainty and discomfort and the moments when I need confirmation. I want to be able to do that for myself and eventually for other people. So I've been having a really fun time with my tarot deck, and right now it's just something that is helping me to learn myself and grow and understand my emotions and my feelings. And it just started to hit me like I like our affirmations. However, what I really want to be doing is doing the tarot. And so at the end of our episodes, I will pull a card and we'll just see where it takes us. And if it's not a good fit, you guys, we might go back to affirmation, but I want to just see how this feels. So I am, if you are listening and not watching, I am shuffling my deck. Oh, so for those of you who are watching, here, let me show you. For those of you on YouTube, if you like this is called the Kaleidodope Tarot Deck by Crystal Banner. So check her out. You can find this on the internet probably. It also comes with this cool guidebook for how to understand it, which was helpful, but I felt like I needed something more extensive, so I actually purchased this one on Amazon. It's called Guided Tarot for Seamless Readings, and it's basically like fully explains what every card means. And so I'm also in the process of understanding the cards while also realizing that yes, it's important to like know the traditional meaning behind the cards, but also eventually I will get more comfortable just like intuitively reading what I feel like the card is telling me. So I'm shuffling right now. I'm going to separate them. Still doing a little bit more shuffling for those of you who are listening, because I just feel so it's so interesting. Tarot is so personal to people, and so like the process of drawing your card and the process of shuffling, it feels very unique and personal to everybody. And for me, I've definitely noticed like my hands feel when the cards are ready. Like they just feel when they're ready. And so I do the process of shuffling, and I feel like I want to shuffle it one more time because it's feeling close. And it's like, it's so interesting. It feels like this, it's like my hands and my body feels at peace when I know the card's ready. Okay, I'm going to pull a card, and so my intention for this card is I want to know what is it that the listeners and the listeners of today's podcast episode, and myself included, what would be most beneficial for us to hear and to understand, to take away from today's episode. Ooh, and I pulled the Knight of Coins upright. You can see that if you're on YouTube. Knight of Coins. It's hard to see. Oh, actually, there, that's better. Knight of Coins upright was what we pulled. And so, you all, I'm still learning, so this is a learning process for me. But what I like to do is look at this card, because I don't always understand all the cards right now because I'm just starting. But this, when I look at it, it makes me feel like there is an offering that is supposed to bring like peace, harmony, some stability, and probably some alignment to ourselves, like a deeper connection to ourselves. It feels like an offering just based on like the hand and of course the coin. Mind you, this tarot deck looks different than the traditional deck, and that's why it's important for everybody to pick the deck that aligns with their personality and their cultural makeup. But this makes me feel like there's an offering that we need to be open to accepting that will bring us a lot of joy, peace, harmony, stability. So now I'm going to pull from my book, The Guided Tarot, to actually read what is the Knight of Coins. And it's so funny, y'all. I've been doing this for about a week and a half, and there are definitely cards that keep coming up. And so, like, several of them I already know the meanings because I have looked them up so many times because it's like this reoccurring card for me for whatever reason. But this one is not super reoccurring for me. So, flipping through the pages, and I appreciate you all's patience as I do this because this is a little bit of a longer process as I am trying to find it and learn it and all of that. Okay, I'm looking for Knight of Coins. Where is it? Why can I not find this right now? Oh, it's because it's Pentacles. So also, sometimes they'll say coins, sometimes they'll say pentacles. So my deck says coins, but the book says pentacles. That's why I couldn't find it. Knight of Pentacles. So again, if you're on YouTube, you can see this. This is what the traditional card looks like for Knight of Pentacles, and you see it's a little bit different. But similarly, it looks like on here in the traditional card, it looks like, to me, it looks like there's someone that's really important offering up something for you. So when I read the original reading, it says, the quest for prosperity moves slowly and steadily. True success is a long game, so don't rush the process. So this is what I need you all to hear. This is what the cards want you to hear. Knights in the tarot are depicted on horseback, returning from a noble quest to present you with an elemental item that you requested. The Knight of Pentacles, or the Knight of Coins, is the only knight in the tarot whose horse appears to stand still, which highlights his connection to the earth's element. His horse is black to evoke a sense of protection. His careful contemplation of the pentacle, or the coin, in his hand symbolizes his connection to the element of air, the element of intellect. This knight knows that in order to bring you to abundance that you've requested, he will need to exercise patience and make intelligent choices. He is assured prosperity because he pays attention to the details and is methodical in his actions. The Knight of Pentacles isn't impressed by get rich quick schemes or lazy shortcuts. He understands that putting in solid effort daily will yield the most lasting and meaningful results. This is true for your mundane task as well. Showing up fully and enthusiastically in all areas of your life, not just for the things you're passionate about. Create abundance in many ways. Set goals and take realistic action steps to avoid burnout, and your routine will transform into a successful daily practice. Taking daily action in small, significant ways towards your personal goals or your wellness routine is best right now. Soon you'll begin setting positive changes in your health or your bank account. Remember to rely on stable friends or family members when you need. I love that. I love that for us. I'm also going to go back to this small one. So the book that actually came with the deck, I want to see what she has to say about this. And hers are often much shorter. Knight of Coins. A positive offer regarding finances, being prepared, financial growth, good investments, strategizing, dependable. The coin appears courtesy of a galactic hand. Again, so this is about my actual deck. This is what this has to say. A coin appears courtesy of a galactic hand, bringing news of opportunity and related to business, finances, and travel. This is something exciting that has the potential to provide something new. The universe moves in divine timing, and the galaxy represents taking your time to make methodical moves forward. Okay, I hope that was for you. And I like that. I like that a lot because it does feel like the things we talk about here, the things that we've discussed, especially today, today's topic was very much heavy with mental health, emotional health, and these things take time. Like, even when I talked about my story, it took time for me to heal. It took time for me to feel better. And it also took me making some good investments in my mental health, and probably could have made more investments in my mental health and my physical health. A galactic hand bringing news of opportunity. Maybe this is an opportunity for you to really think about your mental health, your physical health, your emotional well-being in a much deeper way that feels like it'll get you closer to where you want to go, or better align you to who you know you can be. That was beautiful. So I hope you are enjoying this. I hope you enjoy the tarot, because there's going to be more of it. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening today. I really appreciate you taking the time to listen to my reflections and my stories, and being a part of my journey as I'm growing and learning myself even more. It's such a pleasure to be here, and I cannot wait till the next episode. So I'll talk to you soon. Thank you so much for listening to Dr. Amber's Know and Grow podcast. I love that you're here. I love that we're learning together. We're growing together. We're navigating all these things together. We're really in this together. So if you enjoyed today's episode, please leave me a 5-star rating and review. That is so important because it helps this podcast grow, and it also gives me some feedback on how it's landing for you. Please share this podcast with someone that you love or someone that you know. And don't forget to connect with me on social media at Dr. Amber Thornton. I'll talk to you soon.